The warship moved through the darkness of space like a predator hunting its prey. Its name was the Crimson Talon, and it belonged to a race of tall reptilian warriors who had protected the galaxy for thousands of years. The ship had been following a strange signal for 3 days now, and everyone on board was growing nervous. Commander stood on the bridge, his 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display in front of him. He was big, even for a. His green scales were marked with old battle scars, and his claws had killed more enemies than he could remember. But right now, looking at the coordinates on the screen, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. The signal is coming from Sector 17 Delta, his navigation officer said quietly. Commander, that is the dead sector. Already knew this. Every child in the Galactic Concord knew about Sector 17 Delta. It was the place where the Harvesters had made their last stand centuries ago. The Harvesters were monsters. They were part machine, part living creature, and they ate everything. Not just food. They consumed entire planets, entire civilizations. They had nearly destroyed the galaxy before the Great Alliance finally defeated them. But nobody was sure they were truly dead, so the sector was sealed, forbidden, removed from every star map. Ships that went in never came out. And now something in that sector was sending a signal. Pressed a button on his console. All shock troops report to the briefing room immediately. He turned and walked off the bridge, his heavy footsteps echoing through the metal corridors. The other crew members moved out of his way. They could see the tension in his body, the way his tail swung back and forth like a weapon ready to strike. The briefing room was already filling up when he arrived. 20 warriors stood at attention, their bioluminescent armor glowing a soft blue in the dim light. These were the best soldiers in the Concord. They had fought pirates, crushed rebellions, and faced creatures that would drive ordinary beings to madness. Lieutenant was at the front of the group. She was young for with amber markings on her scales that showed her noble bloodline. But she had earned her place through skill, not birth. Trusted her more than anyone else on the ship. What do we know, Commander? She asked. Activated the holographic display in the center of the room. A small ship appeared, rotating slowly. It was ugly by galactic standards. Chunky metal plates covered its hull. Primitive engines stuck out from the back. Strange symbols were painted on its side, symbols that no translator in the Concord could read. This vessel appeared in Sector 17 Delta 2 days ago, said. It is broadcasting a distress signal, but here is the problem. He zoomed in on the signal frequency. It is using an old Harvester communication code. The room went silent. The warriors looked at each other and could see the fear in their eyes. He understood. The Harvesters were the nightmare that every species in the galaxy shared. Parents told stories about them to frighten children into behaving. Soldiers trained for years just to prepare for the possibility that they might return someday. We do not know what is on that ship, continued. The design matches nothing in our database. The species is unknown, but whoever they are, they have awakened something in the dead sector, something that should have stayed buried. A young soldier named Vex raised his hand. Commander, could this be a trap? The Harvesters were known for using tricks to lure prey. Yes, said simply, it could be a trap. That is why I am not sending ordinary soldiers. I am sending you. He looked at each warrior in turn, meeting their eyes. We board the vessel, we find out what is on it, and if we encounter anything dangerous, we destroy it. No hesitation, no mercy. The galaxy is counting on us. The warriors straightened up. Fear was still there, but now it was mixed with determination. They were shock troops. This was what they were born to do. 30 minutes later, the boarding shuttle launched from the Crimson Talon. It was a small craft, built for speed and stealth, carrying and his 20 warriors toward the unknown ship. Through the shuttle's windows, they could see their target growing larger. Up close, it looked even stranger. The metal was dull, covered in small dents and scratches. One of the engines was dark and damaged. The ship had clearly been through something terrible. "Scanning for life signs," reported, her eyes fixed on her wrist-mounted device. "I am detecting one signature, faint. It is barely alive." "Only one?" asked. "Yes, Commander. Whatever happened on that ship, it left only one survivor." The shuttle docked with a loud clang. The warriors checked their weapons one final time. Plasma lances hummed with deadly energy. Kinetic shields flickered to life around their arms. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. But nothing could truly prepare them for what was about to happen. The airlock hissed open and stale air rushed out to meet them. It smelled wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but unfamiliar, like nothing they had ever encountered before. Raised his weapon and stepped into the darkness. "Move in," he commanded. "Stay alert, remember your training." The shock troops followed him into the alien vessel, their armor casting pale light across walls covered in strange symbols. The corridor was narrow, much too small for their large bodies. They had to hunch over, moving slowly and carefully through the cramped space. Somewhere ahead of them, the last survivor of this mysterious ship was waiting. And somewhere in the back of his mind could not shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Not just for him, not just for his crew. For the entire galaxy. The dead sector had been silent for centuries, but now it was speaking again, and the message it carried would echo through history forever. The alien ship was like nothing had ever seen. The corridors twisted and turned in ways that made no sense to him. The walls were covered in pipes and wires, all tangled together like the roots of some metal tree. Everything was built for creatures much smaller than the. His warriors moved in perfect formation, their weapons ready, their eyes scanning every shadow. The only sounds were their footsteps and the soft hum of their armor. Somewhere in this floating metal box, something was alive, and until they knew what it was, they would treat it as a threat. "The life sign is 30 meters ahead," whispered, checking her scanner. "It is not moving." Nodded, slow and steady, "Check every room." They passed through what looked like a sleeping area. Small beds were attached to the walls, barely big enough for a child by standards. Personal items were scattered across the floor. Pictures, small metal objects, things that meant nothing to but clearly meant everything to whoever had lived here. "Commander," one of the soldiers called out, "you should see this." Moved to join him in a side room. It was some kind of laboratory. Metal tables were covered in tools and equipment. Glass containers lined the shelves, filled with preserved specimens floating in clear liquid. But it was what was inside those containers that made his blood run cold. Tissue samples, organic material, cells and organs that he recognized immediately, even though he had only seen them in old military archives. Harvester cells. By the ancient stars, breathed, staring at the specimens. They were studying the harvesters. Picked up one of the containers. The tissue inside was dark and oily, with that unmistakable pattern of biological and mechanical fusion. It was definitely harvester material. Fresh harvester material. This is why they used the old communication frequency, he realized. They found harvester remains. They were experimenting on them. "But who are they?" Vex asked. "What species would be foolish enough to dig up the harvesters?" Nobody had an answer. The galaxy had spent centuries burying everything related to the harvesters. The knowledge, the technology, the bodies, all of it was supposed to be gone forever. But someone had gone looking. Someone had found it. And now that someone was waiting for them, 30 meters away. They continued deeper into the ship. More signs of disaster appeared around them. Scorch marks on the walls, broken equipment, dark stains on the floor that tried not to look at too closely. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent. "Life sign is just ahead," reported, "behind that door." The door was made of thick metal sealed shut. A small window was built into it, but it was too dark to see through. pressed his face against the glass, trying to catch a glimpse of what was inside. Nothing, just blackness. "Breach positions," he ordered. His warriors spread out, forming a half-circle around the door. Weapons were raised. Shields were activated. Every muscle was tense. Every nerve was ready. "Place the breach charge on the door." It was a small explosive device, designed to blow through metal without damaging whatever was on the other side. He had used it 100 times before, but his hands had never shaken like this. "On my mark," he said, backing away from the door. 3, 2, 1, mark. The charge exploded with a flash of bright light. The door flew inward, crashing against the far wall. Smoke filled the corridor and the warriors rushed forward, weapons firing into the darkness. "Hold your fire," roared. The soldiers stopped. The smoke began to clear, and slowly, very slowly, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Had prepared himself for a monster. He had expected claws and teeth. He had expected a nightmare made of flesh and metal, like the harvesters of old. He was ready to die fighting something terrible, something that would haunt his nightmares forever. But the creature standing before him was none of those things. It was small, so small that it barely reached his chest. Its skin was smooth and pale, with no scales, no armor, no natural protection of any kind. Its eyes were round and soft, filled with terror. Its body was thin and fragile, wrapped in torn gray clothing. It raised its hands slowly, showing that they were empty, and then it spoke. The words meant nothing, too. The language was unknown, not in any database, but he understood the tone. He understood the desperation, the fear, the exhaustion. This creature was not a monster. It was a survivor. "Lower your weapons," commanded, though his warriors were slow to obey. "It is not a threat." "Commander, we do not know what it is," protested. "It could be carrying disease. It could be a harvester trick." "Look at it," said. "Does that look like a harvester to you?" Looked at the creature. It was shaking now, its entire body trembling. Its eyes were wet with what might have been tears, though had never seen a species that produced liquid from its eyes before. "No natural weapons," said slowly, reading from her scanner. "No armor, no venom, fragile skeleton, weak muscles, this species. Commander, this species should not be able to survive at all. It is like prey, pure prey." The creature took a small step forward. It pointed to itself and said a word. "Danny." Then it pointed to itself again and said more words. "Danny Cole, Earth." Stared at the small creature called Danny Cole from the place called Earth. It was the most fragile thing he had ever seen in his entire military career. A strong wind could probably knock it over. A child of his species could probably defeat it in combat. And yet here it was, alive, the only survivor on a ship that had ventured into the dead sector and awakened something ancient. Hal asked, though he knew the creature could not understand him. "How did something like you survive?" Danny Cole looked at him with those strange, round eyes. And in that moment, despite the fear, despite the exhaustion, saw something else in those eyes. Something hard, something unbreakable. He did not know it yet, but he was looking at the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. A human, Danny Cole had never been so tired in his entire life. His body ached. His head pounded. His throat was so dry that every word felt like swallowing broken glass. But he forced himself to stay standing, because falling down in front of these giant lizard monsters seemed like a very bad idea. They were everywhere around him, these creatures. Tall and green, covered in scales, with 4 eyes each and claws that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. They carried glowing weapons that hummed with energy. They wore armor that pulsed with soft blue light. They were aliens, real, actual aliens. 3 weeks ago, Danny would have been excited beyond words. He was after all. He had spent his entire career dreaming about this moment, finding proof that humans were not alone in the universe. But that was before everything went wrong, before his friends died, before the nightmares began. Now he just wanted to survive. The biggest alien, the one who seemed to be in charge, was speaking into some kind of device on his wrist. After a moment, a strange voice came out of it, speaking words Danny could almost understand. "Can you understand this?" Danny nodded quickly. Yes, I can understand you. Please, I need help. My ship is damaged. My crew is dead. I have been alone for 6 days." The aliens looked at each other. The big one spoke again through his translator. "What species are you? Where do you come from?" "I am human," Danny said. "I come from a planet called Earth. We are explorers, scientists. We came here to study the stars." "How did you find the dead sector?" the alien demanded. "This area is forbidden. No ship should be here." Danny laughed, but it came out as a sad, broken sound. "We did not know. We followed signals, strange signals coming from the void. We thought we had found something amazing, a structure floating in space. We thought it was abandoned." He could see the aliens tensing up. They knew exactly what he was talking about. "You boarded the structure," the big one said. "It was not a question." "Yes," Danny's voice cracked. "There were 12 of us. Scientists, engineers, a pilot. We thought we were making history. We thought we were going to be famous." He stopped, taking a shaky breath. The memories were trying to surface, but he pushed them back down. Not now. He could break down later when he was safe, if he ever felt safe again. "What happened?" the alien asked more gently now. "The structure was not abandoned," Danny whispered. "There were things inside, things that had been sleeping for a very long time, and we woke them up." A murmur went through the alien soldiers. Danny could see the fear on their faces, even though their faces were so different from his own. Fear was universal, it seemed. "The harvesters," the big alien said. Danny did not know that word, but he understood what it meant. "Is that what you call them?" "We did not have a name, we just called them monsters." "How did you escape?" a smaller alien with amber markings asked. "The harvesters do not leave survivors, they consume everything." Danny looked at her for a long moment. His hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. "They took my friends," he said slowly. "One by one. We tried to fight, but our weapons did nothing. We tried to run, but they were everywhere, in the walls, in the floors, hunting us like animals." He could see the structure in his mind. The dark corridors, the screaming, the sound of metal scraping against metal as those things crawled through the vents. "Kate was our pilot," Danny continued. "She was my best friend. She told me to run, to get to the shuttle, to warn anyone I could find." "And you ran," the alien said. Danny shook his head. "No, I did not run, not at first." The aliens were staring at him now with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. Danny did not care. He needed them to understand. He needed someone to know what had happened. "I went back," he said. "I found their central chamber, the place where they were, processing my crew, taking them apart, putting them back together as something else." His voice broke and he had to stop for a moment. The images were too strong. Kate's face, half metal, half flesh, reaching out to him. Her voice, distorted and wrong, begging him to join them. "I did not have weapons," Danny continued. "Nothing that worked against them anyway, but I had explosives. Mining charges. We used to collect samples from asteroids. I set them all, every single one." He looked up at the big alien, meeting all 4 of his eyes. "I blew up their nest. I watched it burn, and then I ran." The room was completely silent. The aliens were frozen, their weapons forgotten, their eyes fixed on Danny. "You attacked a harvester hive," the smaller alien said slowly. "Alone, with primitive explosives." "I do not know if I killed them," Danny admitted. "I do not know if that is even possible, but I hurt them. I made them bleed, and if I get the chance, I will do it again." He felt the anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. The fear was still there, but it was buried now beneath something stronger. "They took everything from me," Danny said. "My friends, my ship, my future, everything I cared about, so I decided to take something from them too. The big alien studied him for a long time. Danny could not read his expression, could not tell what he was thinking, but when he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, almost respectful. Your species, these humans, what are you? Danny thought about the question. He thought about Earth, about his family, about all the wars and disasters and extinction events that his species had survived about the stubbornness, the refusal to give up, the absolute determination to keep going no matter what. We are survivors, he said simply. That is what we do, we survive. The big alien nodded slowly. Then he turned to his soldiers and spoke in his own language. Danny could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. Something had changed. These aliens had come here expecting to find a monster. They had found something else instead, something they did not understand yet. Something human. They brought Danny aboard their warship, the Crimson Talon, and gave him a small room near the medical bay. It was simple, just a bed and a table, but to Danny it felt like a palace. He had spent the last 6 days sleeping on the floor of a damaged shuttle, surrounded by the ghosts of his dead friends. Having a real bed was a luxury beyond words. But he could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them, the harvesters, the things they had become, Kate's twisted face calling his name. So instead, he sat in the briefing room with Commander and Lieutenant, telling them everything. From the beginning. From the moment the Wanderer had launched from Earth 3 years ago, full of hope and excitement and dreams of discovery. There were 12 of us, Danny said, staring at the cup of strange paste in front of him. He had not touched it. His stomach was too tight to eat. Dr. Carol Martinez was our leader. She was a biologist like me. She wanted to find life on other planets more than anything. He paused, remembering Carol's smile, the way she laughed at his jokes, the way she stayed up all night analyzing data, driven by pure curiosity. Pete was our engineer. He could fix anything with nothing but wire and determination. Laura handled communications. Sam Torres was our geologist. And Kate, he had to stop again. Kate was our pilot. She dreamed of flying among the stars since she was 5 years old. Tell us about the structure, said gently. The place where you found the harvesters. Danny took a shaky breath. We detected it 3 months into our journey. Strange energy readings coming from an area that should have been empty. We thought it was a natural phenomenon at first, but when we got closer, we realized it was artificial, a massive structure, bigger than anything we had ever seen. He could still see it in his mind, a mountain of dark metal floating in the void, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. No lights, no movement, just silence. We sent probes first, Danny continued. They showed atmosphere inside, breathable air. That should have been our first warning. Why would an abandoned structure maintain a breathable atmosphere? A trap, said quietly. Yes, but we did not see it. We were too excited, too stupid. Danny's voice was bitter. Carol insisted we go inside. I agreed with her. We all did. We put on our suits and entered through a damaged section of the hull. The memories were coming faster now, whether he wanted them or not. The dark corridors stretching into infinity. The walls that seemed to pulse with some inner light. The feeling that they were being watched from every direction. The first 2 days were amazing, Danny said. We found technology beyond anything we had imagined. Machines that physics. Materials that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. We thought we had discovered the greatest archaeological find in human history. When did it go wrong? Asked. Danny was quiet for a moment. On the 3rd day, Sam went missing. We thought he had just wandered off, got lost in the maze of corridors. We spent hours looking for him. He closed his eyes. We found him in a room filled with pods, hundreds of pods all connected by tubes and wires. And inside each pod was something that used to be alive. The harvesters were growing new bodies, said. using stored organic material. We did not know that then, Danny replied. We just knew that Sam was inside one of those pods, and he was changing. His skin was turning gray. Metal pieces were growing out of his flesh. His eyes were open, but they were not his eyes anymore. The room was silent. Even, who had seen countless horrors in his long career, looked disturbed. We tried to run. We tried to get back to our shuttle, but they were already everywhere, in the walls, in the ceiling. They came out of the darkness like ghosts. Fast, so fast. Danny's hands were shaking. He gripped the edge of the table to steady them. Pete was the first to die. They took him right in front of me. Laura went next, then Carol. One by one, they disappeared into the walls. I could hear their screams echoing through the corridors. Sometimes I still hear them. He looked up with eyes that had seen too much. After a while, it was just me and Kate. We found a small room with only one entrance. We blocked the door with everything we could find. We thought maybe we could wait them out. Maybe they would give up. They did not give up, said. No, they just waited, watching us, playing with us. Kate said they were enjoying our fear. She said that was why they did not take us right away. They wanted us to suffer first. Danny stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the stars. Millions of stars, each one potentially home to another civilization. The universe was so big, and somewhere in that vastness, the harvesters were still out there. Kate figured out how to distract them, he continued. She made noise on one side of the room while I slipped out the other. She told me to get to the shuttle, to escape, to warn Earth. He pressed his hand against the cold glass. I should have listened, I should have run, but I could not leave her, so I went looking for the source of the signal, the thing controlling all the harvesters. I thought if I could destroy it, maybe they would stop. You found the central chamber, guessed. Yes, it was a nightmare, bodies everywhere. Some of them still moving, even though they were more machine than flesh. And in the center was this thing, this giant mass of metal and meat, pulsing like a heart. Danny turned back to face them. His expression was hard now, filled with cold fury. That is where I found Kate. They had put her in the center of the mass. She was becoming part of it, becoming the new heart of the hive. But she was still alive, asked. Part of her was, enough to look at me, enough to speak. Danny's voice cracked. She begged me to do it, to set off the explosives, even if it killed her, even if it killed me. She said it was the only way. He sat back down, suddenly exhausted. So I did. I set every charge we had. I looked at Kate one last time, and then I ran. The explosion was, I do not have words. It tore the structure apart. Pieces of it went flying in every direction. My shuttle barely made it out before the whole thing collapsed. Leaned forward, and the harvesters, were they destroyed? Danny shook his head slowly. I do not know. I hurt them badly, that much is certain. But creatures that can survive in space for centuries, that can rebuild themselves from almost nothing. I do not think explosives alone can kill them forever. He looked at the alien commander with eyes full of grief and determination. That is why I am telling you all of this, because they are still out there, waiting, healing, and when they are strong enough they will come back, not just for me, for all of us. And exchanged a look. Whatever they had expected to find on that mysterious ship, it was not this. Not a creature so small and weak, carrying a warning so terrible. Your species, said finally, humans, what will they do when they learn about the harvesters? Danny smiled, but there was no humor in it, only cold, unshakable resolve. The same thing I did. We will fight. We will die if we have to, but we will never stop fighting. That is what humans do, Commander. We do not know how to give up. For the first time since they had met, felt something like hope. The Galactic Conquered High Council met in a chamber so vast that clouds formed near its ceiling. Representatives from 100 different species sat in curved rows that rose up like the sides of a bowl, all facing the central platform where the speakers stood. It was the most important gathering place in the galaxy, where decisions affecting trillions of lives were made. Today, Commander stood on that platform, feeling very small. The Council had summoned him 3 days after he brought Danny Cole aboard the Crimson Talon. News of the discovery had spread quickly through military channels, and now everyone wanted answers. What had been found in the dead sector? What was this new species? And most importantly, were the harvesters truly awakening? Had prepared his report carefully. He had reviewed every piece of data, studied every recording, and spoken with Danny for hours. He thought he understood the situation now, but understanding it and explaining it to 100 skeptical politicians were two very different things. "Commander," the council speaker said, her crystalline body shimmering with impatience, "you claim to have made first contact with a previously unknown species in Sector 17 Delta, a forbidden zone. Please explain why we should not consider this a breach of galactic law." "Because, Speaker Thalia, what I found there changes everything," replied. He activated the holographic display and an image of Danny Cole appeared above the platform. Small, fragile, utterly unremarkable by galactic standards. Several council members laughed. A diplomat, a massive creature covered in thick brown fur, snorted loudly. "This is what you brought us here to see, a hairless animal. It looks like something my offspring would keep as a pet." "I thought the same thing at first," admitted. "Initial scans showed no natural weapons, no armor, no venom, no enhanced senses. Their planet, called Earth, is not particularly harsh. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. By every measure we use to evaluate species, they should be classified as prey." "Then why are we wasting our time?" the demanded. Smiled, showing his teeth. "Because this prey creature, alone and armed with primitive explosives, walked into a harvester hive and set it on fire." The laughter stopped. The chamber went very quiet. "The harvesters," Speaker Thalia said slowly, "you have confirmation." "Yes, the human vessel had been studying harvester tissue samples. They accidentally awakened a dormant hive while exploring a structure in the dead sector. 12 humans entered that structure. 1 came out. Pressed a button and the holographic display changed. Now it showed images from the human ship's computers, the structure, the pods, the twisted creatures crawling through the darkness. "These are the final recordings from the vessel called the Wanderer," explained. "The humans documented everything, even as their crew members were being taken. They did not stop recording until the very end." The council watched in horrified silence as the images played out. Humans running through dark corridors, screaming, dying, but also fighting, always fighting, even when there was no hope left. The final recording was from a camera mounted on Danny Cole's suit. It showed him entering the central chamber. It showed the mass of flesh and metal in the center. It showed Kate, half converted, begging him to end it. And then it showed Danny setting the charges, looking at his dying friend one last time, and running. The explosion filled the screen with white light. When it faded, the structure was in pieces, drifting through the void. "One human," said into the silence. "One fragile, weaponless human did more damage to the harvesters than our ancestors managed in decades of war." A diplomat raised one of its crystalline limbs. "Perhaps he simply got lucky. One individual does not represent an entire species." "You are correct," agreed. "So I studied their history, their entire history, as much as we could recover from the ship's database." The display changed again. Now it showed images from Earth, wars, natural disasters, plagues that killed millions, extinction events that should have ended them forever. "This species has been nearly destroyed dozens of times," said, "by their environment, by disease, by each other, and every single time they came back stronger." He zoomed in on an image of a human city, rising from the ashes of destruction. "They call themselves humans, but I think a better name would be survivors, because that is what they are. They survive everything. They refuse to die. The council was listening now, really listening. Could feel the shift in the room, the growing understanding that this was not a joke. The harvesters are awakening, he continued. We have suspected this for decades. Every model, every prediction says they will return within our lifetimes. And when they do, we will need every advantage we can get. He pointed at the image of Danny Cole. This human lost everything. His friends, his ship, his mission, everything. And his first reaction was not to hide, it was not to run, it was to fight back, to make them pay. He turned to face the council directly. I'm not saying humans will save us. I am not saying they are better than us. But I am saying that we have just discovered a species that looks at the most terrible thing in the galaxy and asks one simple question. How do I kill it? The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates were shouting objections. Others were demanding more information. A few were already calling for contact missions to Earth. But was not finished. There is one more thing you should know, he said, raising his voice to be heard. I asked the human, Danny Cole, what his species would do when they learned about the harvesters. Do you know what he said? The room fell quiet again. He said they would fight. They would die if they had to, but they would never stop fighting, because humans do not know how to give up. Stepped back from the platform. I believe him, he said simply. And I think when the harvesters return, we will be very glad to have humans on our side. Far away, on the Crimson Talon, Danny Cole slept in his small room near the medical bay. He dreamed of Earth, of his parents, of the small house in Colorado where he had grown up watching the stars and wondering what was out there. He did not know that his name was being spoken in the halls of power. He did not know that he had just changed the course of galactic history. He did not know that human ships would soon be welcomed in conquered space, that his species would soon stand alongside creatures they had never imagined, preparing for a war that would determine the fate of everything. All he knew was that somewhere out there, in the cold darkness between the stars, the things that had killed his friends were still waiting. And Danny Cole, small and fragile and utterly human, was already planning his return. He was going back to the dead sector. He was going to find whatever was left of the harvesters, and he was going to finish what he started. Because that was what humans did. They survived, they fought, and they never ever stopped. The galaxy had been afraid of monsters for thousands of years. But now, for the first time, the monsters had something to fear too. Humanity had arrived.